welcome back to the energy tips for week 8. That is the 16th till 22nd of February 2019. And as always, we're going to go through the different layers here of how collective energies affect you and what I recommend for you to focus on instead of getting pulled into those energies. So this being a dark red week, it indicates that there are deeper subconscious patterns. When we have these kind of weeks, it's usually an indication that we deal with karmic stuff. So what does this mean? It means that we're basically hitting our blind spots, okay? And when we hit our blind spots, it usually also triggers the common coping mechanisms, the ones that we resort to when things get a little iffy, when things get a little tricky or scary, okay? So one of the big things here about this week, as I've already laid out in the energy update, is this really being forced to go into truth with ourselves and finding the higher expression of our true identity. And what is our true identity? Well, if we all knew that, then we probably wouldn't hear you, wouldn't be watching this. So our true identity on a spiritual level is, what we would probably call our true self, okay? This is, the unchanging part in us that is unaffected by our life circumstances. But because we are 3D beings and we have a physical and we have an emotional and we have a mental, we are affected by our circumstances, and that brings up ego. And ego is the culminated, basically the collection of all these things that we've developed in the course of our life since our early childhood that help us to cope with reality, that help us to cope with our circumstances. And most of us experience our circumstances as challenging, as not so optimal, maybe our upbringing, our parenthood, maybe, poverty or abuse or trauma or just really extreme type of things that we've experienced when we were young. And so we all have this in common, guys, that we develop things that help us to get past our trauma or past our insufficiencies, or things that we perceive as flaws, either about ourselves or our loved ones, our parents at first, and then later our friends, and then later our relationships, our marriage, and when we get older, maybe our family, our kids, and our career. And so, this problem with not being able to discern truth or, really being held to learn how to do this and how to regulate ourselves without resorting to our coping mechanisms is this really big collective task right now. So this isn't just you, going through this. Is an entire collective, and we've talked about this in the past, how old structures are falling apart, and that's not a bad thing, but the new structures and new things to orient ourselves on and to feel safety, to feel safe with, aren't quite there yet. And so we're just now making the first steps out of limbo. All right, that's why I called this week coming out of limbo. And one of the big things here that will affect us in next week is a strong spiritual, a strong sort of energetic impact. Not so much maybe in the physical. So physically, guys, most of you are going to feel issues around release, around allowing yourself to feel and to feel validated with your emotions, okay? And this is where we have to be very careful to not externalize this, to not seek the validation for our own feelings or for, our physical conditions from the outside. So, being sort of overly whiny or about our physical condition, for instance, can create a lot of negative attention here this next week, okay? But we'll get to this when we go through the physical layers. The chakras, the energy centers involved here that are responsible for our subconscious response, okay? Not the psychological or the behavioral the things that we respond with, but what sort of steers up our energies from within, okay, the inside aspect of that, the internal triggers, are the barrier between our fourth and our fifth chakra. So this is right here, this is our thymus again. This is between our heart and between how we express ourselves, how we show up, how authentic we are. Okay, there's a little bit of a tension here, okay? And if we cannot pierce through this or break through this, then we tend to resort to our old, coping mechanisms. And just one more word about coping mechanisms, guys, that these are the things that are most familiar to us. So don't think that besides maybe, substances that you use in those times, or increased, sort of checking out, trying to not face reality. The coping mechanisms are very, very complex and often are our blind spots. It's like this, the stuff that we don't want to admit to ourselves, the stuff that, makes us feel sort of niggly from within, and where we're not entirely sure what it actually is that we're facing. And so we are resorting to something like, say, eating, or resorting to distraction, or resorting to going into self-pity, or we resorting into criticizing the others, or we even going into financial fears can be part of our coping mechanism and part of distraction. Okay, so when it comes to piercing through this, we have to have this willingness to be completely awake and completely conscious about this and look at it. Hey, how am I dealing with this right now? Okay, so this is the fourth and the fifth chakra, and then comes the this overall tendency of our fifth chakra, our truth, to move into this higher expression. That's our seventh chakra. That's our connection with the cosmos, with the divine law, divine order, divine, how nature works and what is most natural for us. And as a spiritual being in a physical body, there is a dualism there that we often perceive as imperfection about ourselves, where we have these goals and we want to be spiritual and we want to be in a certain way. And we can feel this as clear as day, that this is who we are, or at least this is a part of who we are. And then we have these habits and we have these ways of expressing ourselves that we don't even see anything wrong with, and how they contradict. So there's a mismatch of that. Okay, and then what brings in the karmic aspects and like the problems here with our relationships this week is a very strong impact on our first chakra, the right to be here, the right to feel safe with someone, and what it is that in the past has made us feel safe, all right? So the first chakra is, sort of helped to move more into this truthful heart expression, into more empathy, into more, really accepting all our conditions and even the problems that we have, financial problems or problems with our job, as something that is valid, okay? And we don't need to make this go away. It doesn't have to make us feel this is the end of everything, okay? We're not going to die, guys, okay? Even if you lose a job or if you break up from your relationship, you're not going to die because of this, all right? But our ego goes into this all or nothing, into this like, oh my God, this is the end of everything. And that's why, these coping mechanisms or these things get triggered. So again here, by cultivating the discipline of staying in your truth and, really making a conscious effort, to see through that, is what can allow you to ultimately overcome these blind spots, these subconscious coping mechanisms. And often they're not even so subconscious to us. Often there's a part of us that knows exactly what we're doing there and sees the darkness in that, and it beats us up, this critical inner voice where we like go into this like self-criticism and we are so bad, and this is something that we can't identify with. So the higher or the the higher harmonic here of our identity has a lot to do with letting go of these false identifications, letting go of the projections of ourselves, letting go of trying to be someone we're not. And this is really, really hard because the whole collective, our whole society is based on all these projections. It's all solar plexus, third chakra, dog eats dog, who has more money, who is more famous, who, instant gratification and so forth. And this is what we're up against here as truth seekers, as people who want to grow into embodying our empathy, not just understanding it intellectually, what it means to be an empath or an empathetic person, what it means to be a spiritual person. Deep down, we all want to be good. There's a very, very tiny amount of people really who choose to be evil. But oftentimes we forget that this choice is at the core of our identity, okay? And when we don't make this choice conscious, we can never really be sure. We're always confused. We feel flawed, and we feel undeserving, and we feel forsaken. All right, and this is where our depression and our anxiety comes from, because we don't really know who we truly are, because we don't make this a conscious choice. So for this whole entire year, really, but this week is almost like a training round. Okay, it's all about becoming fully aware, of what is real and what isn't, and where it's fake, where you are pretending to do something or to be somebody or to be nice or to be pleasing or to be accepting, and where you're in actuality violating your own integrity, your own boundaries, and your own values. Okay, so at the end of the day, guys, the way you identify yourself as true is through you living up to your own standards, to your own virtues. And all this like sort of cringy stuff that we have to go through is all serves us to raise that bar within ourselves, to say, hey, you know what, I'm consciously deciding to not do this anymore because I know it's toxic, I know it's not good for me, I know it's not going to get me where I want to be. I know this is not the right way to show up. I know that this isn't really doing, setting a good role model. I know that this isn't who I truly am, and to let that go. All right. I want to dive a little deeper here into what a fake relationship is and how you can identify this when we talk about the social, the interrelationship aspects here of this week. Only to give you guys a little bit of a guideline for this. So I'm going to zoom through the other layers of our being. Physically, you're going to have continued nightmares, and you're going to feel this crown chakra buzz, and you're going to feel this pull into the realm of spirituality. You will feel that you have a hard time sleeping, maybe, especially if you have kids. They have nightmares too, and they'll wake up like every hour, and this is going to tire you on top of your own tiredness. So stay calm, learn to slow down. Okay, take breaks whenever you can. Especially take care of your water intake, guys. Do not allow yourself to get dehydrated. That's detrimental here for this next week. So when you have headaches, issues with your throat, issues with your back, then know that most of that can be remedied by taking small naps, meditating, and drinking lots of water, and maybe refraining from the things that continue to dehydrate you. Alcohol and cigarettes and coffee are all dehydrating you. Okay, those of you who have thyroid issues, and with it also perhaps hormonal imbalances, take good care of this. I mean, I'm not a medical professional, so I can't really give you advice, but really seek things that can help you to balance, this, the stuff that can get stuck in your throat. All right, and thymus tapping is always a good one. Deep breathing, guys. I am breathing is super, super effective next week. All right, look this up on the website if you need a refresher on this. Also, those of you who have kidney issues or may actually have kidney issues or experience bladder infection, know that this is part of this collective influx. We have to really allow ourselves to let things go through us, and that's why hydration plays such a big role with this, and to release things. So let go, actively take care of your health issues. Do not ignore them, and actively slow down. Okay. Emotionally, I've already pointed at this. We're going to feel a little, maybe depressed, maybe go into anxiousness and fear, whatever triggered it. My tip for you is look at your boundaries. This is the main thing that I see next week, is that our unclear or unhealthy boundaries will trigger this in us. Okay, so learn how to regulate yourself emotionally, learn how to slow down the intensity of things. In German we have a saying, and that is, nothing gets eaten as hot as it gets cooked. And this is always what comes forward for me when I get pulled into the drama of emotions, be it my own or other people's. I'm like, okay, let's just slow down a bit. Let's just take a breather. Okay, nothing gets, you don't have to deal with it as intense as it is right now, so go into this slowing down. And even big emotions, there's nothing wrong with big emotions. I know we've talked about this in the past, but allow yourself to have big emotions. Just understand that the state that you're in while you're having them is not going to contribute to resolving anything. Okay, so regulate your emotions instead of trying to make them go away, or judge yourself for your emotions. Okay. Also, in conjunction with others, don't pretend to feel differently from how you feel. This has to do with these boundaries, because whenever you sort of put a fake front on or a fake smile, when you feel like crap inside, seriously, this is just increasing the inner conflict and your anxiety and your powerlessness with it. Mentally, this whole piercing through deception, delusion, and your own sort of self-lies has a lot to do with becoming more aware of your expectations. How realistic are your expectations? And I can't say this often enough, guys. If you have unrealistic expectations, or you really go into this the sort of projected idealness of things, you're setting yourself up for failure. Okay, you're setting this up yourself. This is nobody's fault. You steering towards your abyss. Because if what you are striving for, and what is realistic in your situation, if this doesn't match up, your true self feels that. Your true self knows that. Okay, and the more you have to justify, the more you have to make excuses for things, the more you are going into illusion or projection. So once more, check your ideals here. Even when it's about diets or exercise or whatever, yeah, sure, we have an ideal of how we want to be and how we want to eat, but don't make this rule you. Okay, this is about you understanding that this is a lifelong process, and many of you here are confronted with the unraveling of karmic processes that take several lifetimes. Okay, not to curb your enthusiasm, but to understand that what you put up there as ideal, okay, isn't always realistic. I had a conversation with a heart warrior yesterday, and I asked him, sort of, what are your idols? What are your, what do you live up to? And he said something that I could subscribe to. He said, well, to live a life like Jesus. And that's for a spiritual person, and not a bad value, not a bad, idol to have. But then again, we've got to ask ourselves if this is truly how we want to live. So when you have these gurus or these teachings that you adore, or where you put people on the pedestals, you got to look twice if this is really what you want. Okay, don't let this rule you, because what you're doing is you're beating yourself up in the process of never really being able to match up with something that high up there. And this is not who you truly are. There is nobody out here that is a higher authority than your true self in being yourself. So who you are the expert in who you are. There's no other expert out there. Okay, the only problems that we have with our blind spots is that we sometimes can't feel it or can't pinpoint it anymore. And especially if we've been, spending a lot of time in toxicity or circumstances where we've kind of lost a sense for what is actually true for us, it's really hard to feel this. Okay. Now, in regards to love and relationships here, guys, this is a big one. This is the transition between the mental and the spiritual and the social. Is this actually true love, what we are experiencing with someone, or is this actually true love that we are wanting? So whether or not you are in a relationship, you have to look at your ideals of love as well and the purpose of love for you. Okay, because a lot of times, we have this like skewed view of how this should be, and this makes us completely incapable of actually, feeling if a connection that we have with another person is true or not, or what the purpose of that is. So I'm just throwing a few keywords at you here. So many of us empaths have this like skewed idea that love has to be sacrificial in some way, and that there is honor in that. There is no honor, guys, in dishonoring or violating your own integrity or your own true self. On no level, not even on the highest level of selflessness and devotion. Selflessness does not mean to sacrifice yourself. The higher harmonics of self, of your divine self, does not include sacrifice, guys. It's a misunderstanding of love, a misunderstanding of spirituality. And where does this play out in our relationships? Here, I'm going to give you an overview here, okay? How can you tell? This is very, very practical. How can you tell if you are in a true self relationship, okay? If what you're striving for is a true self relationship. But let's stay with, the past relationships. It's maybe a little easier for you to find this in there. You know that you are in a toxic relationship when you cannot see that you are in a fake relationship over a prolonged amount of time. So there's degrees of that. So just, finding out that there maybe isn't much substance or much foundation to your relationship doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a toxic relationship. But typically it's progressive. So the less we are able to actually identify if we are in a fake relationship or not, the less we are actually true to our own boundaries and our own integrity, and the more we tend to agree to toxicity in our relationships. And most of you already know this, there's a connection with our inner child and with the parenting that we've experienced. I don't want to go into this here right now. I just want to give you the markers. I want to give you a big sort of heads up. Besides those signs, that you may not be in a true self relationship, you will also experience something that happens usually very early in your life, not so much if you're younger, but if you're a little older, and that is the confusion between sex and love. So many of us have these beliefs that when we have sex with someone, we need to be in love with them. And for many of us women, growing up in a society where this was very skewed, through religion and also societal portrayal of female sexuality, we are deeply, deeply confused between these things, and we are often using our sexuality in order to feel validated and feel loved. And so many of you have had relationships in the past where, you felt kind of rushed into having sex, and then you had to make yourself feel in love with this person. This is a disclaimer here, okay? This is a specific problem. A male can experience this too, but I've seen this more in female empaths, okay? Because this pressure to have sex at a young age often, comes from the outside, and for women this usually takes a little longer to develop. So, not to ride this, but there are gender specifics in the way we subjectively experience connectedness. And for a woman, it is very typical to wanting to experience connectedness first and then to engage in a physical connection. And for a man, it's very typical, and there's no judgment with this, to go into physical connection, physical intimacy first, and then as a result of that to feel deeper connectedness. So this is part of our human duality, and I don't want you to judge yourself or the other You know, if this is something that you've observed as a pattern of confusion in yourself in the past. But what are the signs? So, you know, a really good sign for a good foundation with somebody is when you can have deep conversations, when you can feel free and safe to speak from your heart, when you feel, you know, that there is a genuine interest and care about what you have to say or what you want to share. And when this is encouraged in the relationship, even if it gets a little tricky sometimes, all right? So if you feel that, you know, the other is kind of like either just talking about themselves or, you know, sort of rushing over, you know, sort of your true feelings, you know, then this could be an indication that you may not feel safe enough on the long run, you know, to really share. So you got to have that feeling of safety, that it's safe to share. Safety has a lot to do with a strong foundation. And, you know, one of the things that make us feel safe, which would be sign number 2, that you may not be in a true self relationship, is that we feel that it's okay to be who we are, you know, whether we have makeup on or not, that whether, you know, we are dressed up or not, whether we are in a good place or in a bad place, okay, that it's okay to be me, okay, and this it needs to be reflected in your partner, who needs to give you that space, and also in you, of course, you know, being willing to give the other that space. Okay, so, you know, when you feel rushed into things, when you feel rushed into having to perform in a certain way, or rushed into having sex maybe, or rushed into, you know, into going into a commitment with somebody before you feel safe, that's a big red flag, guys, okay? It can feel sort of uplifting for our ego to feel that, oh, this person must really love me if they want to, you know, if they're so serious about this. But it may, you know, overstep your boundaries here. This may not be the right timing yet. You may feel rushed, and even if you don't want to admit it, you know, you may actually become insecure, you know, about whether or not this is the right move. So never hesitate to ask for the space to feel things out, you know, and also to stay within your timing of things. When somebody truly loves you, it is important to the other person that you feel safe, that you feel this is the right time, okay? Number 3 is, you know, when there are things, and this counts especially when you look back at your relationships and you want to evaluate if they were actually true self relationships. You know, when you feel like there was a lot of external stuff, there was a lot of cool outer stuff. Maybe we you know, made a lot of cool trips together, or we accumulated a great house. Maybe we even accumulated kids. You know, sort of these outside white picket fence kind of things. But if you look past all this, and maybe you are divorced, or you are not in this relationship anymore, and you look back and what was beyond that? Was there anything about that deeply moved me? And, you know, be careful here to mistake this with some of your internal processing of a relationship where you see that you've learned a lot, you know, or where you could resolve karmic aspects with this relationships, and that this means a lot to you, okay? So the meaning of a relationship. When the meaning of a relationship is in sort of what you've learned about yourself through going through, like, say, the drama or the hardship of that relationship, it may not even have anything to do with the other person. And the same vice versa, you know, look at how the other person, you know, regards you, if this is even about you. One of the things that I've noticed with my past relationship partners is that, you know, if we break up, like, say we've had a 3-4 year relationship and we break up, and they immediately replace me, what does that tell me? They immediately have a new partner, like right off the bat. Does that mean like that they just sort of, that it's exchangeable? So what is individual? What is true about that relationship? These things survive, guys, even if you break up or get divorced. The true meaning of a relationship and how this relates to the other person, that prevails. You never lose that, okay? And this can tell you if this actually was a true self relationship. Number 4 is, you know, when you constantly feel confused. whether you are loved or whether you love the other. When you're not 100% sure, when you constantly question either yourself or the other. And oftentimes, it depends on the age group that you're in. It has to do with commitment. So when it comes to the outer props of commitment, like say, putting the ring on someone, being asked to get married and so forth, are seen in some societies, are seen as sort of the ultimate commitment. This isn't necessarily true in all societies. So, it's not just about commitment. It's about the question whether or not this is truly about wanting to be with you and for yourself as well. Is this truly about wanting to be with this person? Can I imagine to be with this person in relationship? And oftentimes this reflects, this points back at yourself. Is the person that I am showing up as, that I am representing in this relationship, is this authentic enough for me to really wanting to be with myself? This is the mirror of our true self relationships. We have to be willing to be wanting to be with ourselves, to feel that it is true to us. And if it's either us or the other who do not show up as true, then we are constantly confused. We may not be aware of this, but we will constantly sort of either try to change the other or try to make him different, or we will feel like the other is constantly criticizing us and trying to make us become somebody different. That confusion is a sign for a relationship that is not based on truth, that is perhaps even toxic, because this can go very, very far. Okay. Number 5 is when any problem that arises creates a huge drama. There is no such thing as a perfect relationship, and even perfect relationships, this is contradictory, right? But they have problems. There are things that need to be resolved from time to time. Changes happen, we have to adapt to things, we have to work with things. And, as energy worker, I do a lot of couple coaching as well. And I always look at the couple's willingness to resolve things, okay? If there is a problem and one or both, but for the most part it's usually one, is not really willing to talk about problems, not really willing to go into the seriousness of things, or even if they don't perceive it as a problem, but if you say, this is my concern, or I have a problem with this, and they're kind of brushing it off and saying, well, you're just making this all up, or just in your mind, or that's your problem. Okay, this isn't based on truth, because when somebody has a concern or a problem with something, even if you disagree with how they're seeing it, but then the only way to work through this is to actually exchange that, to speak from the heart, and to listen, and to to care about what the concerns of the others are, and to feel that the other cares about your concerns, so that you actually can work through something. So, your prospect or your chances of actually having a happy and lasting relationship comes through this willingness to work through problems. And if the other has a behavioral pattern such as shutting down the moment you want to talk about problems, or turning into a rage beast, or turning this into an accusation, or seeing everything as an accusation, or getting all upset about you pointing out what you perceive as real, then you need to look twice. This is not a good foundation. Okay. Number 6 is something where you have to really look closely, because it also plays into your own manipulations, and that is something like a power struggle, something like, I'm more right than you, I'm more spiritual than you, I'm more true than you, I'm like whatever, this comparison and insecurity of wanting to be somebody you're not, or trying to be perfect, or comparing yourself with the other. Okay, this is a big red flag in relationships, because it sets you up for power struggles, for manipulation. And the reason why I brought up the manipulation is that as empaths and energy readers, we have that ability to read what the other person wants, or what they think, or what they desire from us, and this gets us into trouble over and over again without noticing. We may think that we are trying to help them, or trying to heal them, or whatever. All these rescuer and fixer stuff, you know, is a form of manipulation. It's a coverted form of trying to control the other, and vice versa. So codependency in a relationship is a huge red flag, because now you have two people, and if it's two empaths, you know, trying to heal another instead of themselves, you know, going into a complete illusion of what a relationship is about. A relationship is about sharing this experience of healing and growing with another, not, you know, being healed through the other, or becoming more whole through the other, or being told what to do, or, you know, any of these things. It also doesn't have anything to do with being more right than the other, you know. So in discussions, if you feel that the other person goes off on, you know, you're wrong, and the way you're seeing this, be it spiritual views or political opinions or whatever, and storms off, and, you know, doesn't want to talk to you anymore, you know, gives you the silent treatment or withdraws, you know, this is a very, very big red flag, because you really can't discuss or resolve or work through anything in this way. And if it's constantly about, well, you doing this too, or, you know, you do this even more often than me, or, you know, it's a matter of accusations or allegations or generalizations, you know, you're already off in illusion, because there is no solution there, at least not a higher vibratory solution, the one that you would like to find with your partner. So you got to be really careful, you know, with these kind of things. Number 7 has to do with projection, and also with this manipulation that we do without even noticing. Sometimes, as energetically sensitive people, we can also project our idea of our relationship, you know, this sort of idealized version, either of the other person or of the relationship. This is where fantasy bonds come in, where we love the idea of the other person, or being with the other person, or the relationship, more than actually the person. And this is where this emptiness comes from, you know, that we sometimes feel after we ended a relationship, because, you know, besides the props, the external stuff, there was nothing really there. So in order to prevent that from happening, you know, you really got to double check on your own projections. What are you projecting? Not just what are you emotionally or psychologically projecting here, as in like sort of, you know, not admitting to your own problems and trying to make the other responsible for it, or unconsciously projecting this on the other, but also your projections, your energetic projections, you know, how much you actually energetically intrude and violate the others' safe for a space for being themselves, allowing themselves to be, and trying to override this with this fantasy, you know, of how this should be, and how we are made for another, and how this is a twin soul relationship, and how this is, you know, more than everybody else's relationship, and how this is all special. Okay, big red flag, guys. Very common in spiritual circles. So this whole twin soul, twin flame thing is very, very deceptive, and you know, really creates more havoc, you know, more harm than good for people, because it distracts them from, you know, the practical aspects of actually being true selves, right? By making it all special, making it all super spiritual. All right. Number 8 is when you feel that things are not matching up. So let's say you feel an attraction to a person, and this is often linked to the energetic projection, also the sexual projection that comes with that ability to project your energy. That you feel this like really strong attraction to somebody, but it doesn't match up with how they show up, you know, how they treat you, and vice versa, you know. It's not enough, guys, to just have this like really strong sort of fleshly physical intimacy, and even sometimes in the etheric, okay? It's a whole chapter in itself, but, you know, to live something there that feels truly, truly special in regards to the physical intimacy or this connectedness that you feel there, that is all fake, really, because it's projected, okay? If you want to know if your relationship really, you know, is really a vibrational match, is really based on this true resonance, okay, then you need to discipline yourself and stop projecting. Tough one. It's a good therapy for every couple, especially empath couple, to refrain from projecting and stop texting and stop emailing and stop calling all the time. Energetically, that's very, very impolite. It's very infringing. Okay? Those are all signs that you are feeling that your relationship doesn't have enough substance, so that you have to fill this up with your own projections. Okay, red flag, guys. And then number 9, is something that in the practical you can see this, especially in spiritual circles a lot, uh, when it feels like people aren't really interested in your friends, in your ancestors, in in your family, in where you're from, where they just want to take you as you are, and they say, oh, I love you the way you are, I don't care about your past. No, guys, that's a red flag. Okay, I mean, this is all about understanding you, and if you really want to have a relationship from the heart, you want to feel the other person also, sort of where they're from, not just what their house looks like or their car looks like, but also what their relationship with their friends and their parents look like. Our our relationship with our true self reflects in our outer relationships, and this is a way to better feel the other person and also understand maybe some of their problems. If you feel like your partner has no interest in seeing your connecting with your friends or with your world, okay, there's an indication that they just want you to be part of their world. Okay, and this can go as far as like forbidding you to be with certain people, or forbidding you to read books, or to listen to certain spiritual teachers, or be part of certain spiritual groups or teachings. Okay, this can go very, very far. It's a huge, huge, big flag. Sign number 10, that your relationship may not be based on the principles of a true self relationship, the principles of authenticity and true self, is if there are a lot of unseen, unspoken, invisible ties, energetic ties, pink elephants, feeling like you're walking on eggshells, feeling like you have to constantly sort of feel out, how your partner feels, and be careful about what you say or what you do and what you don't do, where there's a constant sort of wariness and constantly sort of mentally anticipating what is going to happen next, where you constantly insecure that that if you show up in the way that you feel is true to you, would make this person act in a certain way. This leads into this whole section of emotional abuse and the red flags. So when there's when there are these subjects that you definitely can't talk about, or when you feel like that your boundaries are constantly being tested, when your no's are not being taken for a no, when people keep trying, when they do this constant sort of flipping between abusing you on the one hand, or treating you really badly, and then rescuing you on the other hand. When there's silent treatment, withholding or withdrawing, this constantly sort of feeling rejected or feeling punished for something. When there's passive aggressiveness, when you feel like your feelings or your opinions are being disregarded or dismissed or degraded or straight out ignored, where you don't feel that what you have to say or what you bring in is validated at all. I mean, this can go as far as like completely speaking over you and ignoring you, when you want to say something. You often also see this in the sense that people constantly distract. Even humor can be one of those tactics to redirect your energy towards them. And last but not least, obviously, when your partner makes everything about him or her. So these 10 signs that show you that your relationship may be more of a fantasy bond or even a toxic relationship. So that's a gradient, there's different gradients. They don't mean, it doesn't mean that if you can identify, a few of these things in your relationship, that this is a toxic relationship, okay? But when you can identify and relate to these 10 signs, and you feel that a lot of these things are actually happening in your relationship, it is a sign that what you believe to be true love or a true self relationship may more be a relationship that's based on solar plexus, on control, on constantly sort of pushing into the other, and trying to gain some kind of energetic advantage. Okay, so this is often something that goes both ways. So a lot of that has to do with us also being willing to acknowledge that, that some of these things we are doing too. Withholding, for instance, or silent treatment, or going into the superior mode, or oh, he just doesn't understand me, or he just, can't see it the way I'm seeing this because I'm energetically sensitive and he's not, or, because he doesn't really want to go on this journey or whatever. When you find yourself in this place where you make excuses, or where you have to justify, or where you have to somehow, compensate for something that deep down, on your true self level, you feel is not right. That's when you become incongruent. That's when you basically invite all these imbalances, all this exhaustion, all this constantly sort of feeling you're walking on eggshells, and what comes around the corner, this anxiousness, and also the frustration and the depression that can come with this. That means you are refusing to be real. You're refusing, or you're rejecting or resisting your true self perception. Okay? So remember that anything you can heal within yourself, anytime you can hold the space for yourself, it allows you to hold the space for others. But this needs to be mutual. So if a relationship is not based on mutual exchange of energy, then it typically means that one of the two are either in an illusion or consciously or unconsciously exploiting the energy of the other. Okay? This here from my end here, in regards to reading through this, I'm probably going to do a separate video where I cut this out, as one of these concepts for empaths. Spiritually, you could hear in what I just shared, what the problem is here for this next week. You're going to have to be really clear about what is truly spiritual, and what is, just a projected idea of being spiritual, being a good person, white shadow, this, or a twin soul illusion that with your partner. That's a huge, big illusion next week, guys. So if you feel stuff like that coming in, or people sort of energetically barging into your energy etherically, making you feel like, oh my God, this is it, this is my soulmate, step back, slow down, cut down on the projection, on the texting, just for this next week, to see what's truly there. Energetically, once more, know how to ground, how to center, and how to self-clear yourself. But, just to be able to regulate your energies and your emotions better, but also, consciously choose to break through your blind spots, guys. Consciously choose to do shadow work. Look at your white shadow, guys. It's so important for your spiritual journey. If you don't feel what I talk about when I talk about white shadow, this projected nicety and this pleasing and fixing and rescuing and selfless and sacrificial victim self is all fake. That is not what you're designed to be. This is not who you truly are. This does not go along with divine order. Okay, so regulate your energy. Come to our workshops, come to our energy healing and training sessions if you want to go deeper, or, be consequential and sign up for the 10-day challenge, working on a specific issue that you come forward with that you would like to work through within 10 days. Make everything sacred.